My ex arrived at my baby shower and claimed that my baby was his. Later I found out that my golden child sister paid him for doing this. Growing up with my older sister wasn't easy. She was always the star child, perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect everything. Our parents set impossible standards for me based on her achievements, and I felt like I was constantly falling short. No matter what I did, it was never good enough because she had already done it better. In school I got decent grades, but I struggled with science. My parents never directly called me dumb, but their disappointed looks said everything. They would always say things like, "Your sister never had trouble with chemistry," or "Maybe your sister can help you with this." It was frustrating because I had other interests and talents, but those didn't seem to matter. My sister excelled in sciences and went on to become a surgeon. I chose business school instead, which only widened the gap between us. I was good at what I studied, but it wasn't prestigious enough in my family's eyes. While she focused on her career, I found happiness in other areas of life. I met my husband at work 3 years ago, and we got married last year. 2 months after our wedding, we found out we were expecting our first child. The pregnancy news actually helped fix things with my parents. We had worked through our past issues after I graduated college. I had finally opened up about how their constant comparisons had affected me growing up. I told them how I felt like nothing I did was ever enough, and how their praise of my sister made me feel worthless. To their credit, they apologized and made genuine efforts to change. They admitted they hadn't realized how their behavior had hurt me, and promised to do better. Our relationship improved significantly after that conversation. My sister, however, wasn't happy about any of it. She had always been competitive, but this was different. She couldn't stand that I had found happiness in areas where she was struggling. At my engagement party, she barely smiled and kept making comments about how some people rush into marriage. At my wedding, she sat in the corner with a sour face and left early, claiming she had an emergency at the hospital. I should mention my ex. We dated for 4 years in college, and it was toxic from start to finish. He was controlling and manipulative. If I went out with friends, he would accuse me of cheating. If I didn't answer his calls immediately, he would show up at my place unannounced. I kept going back to him because he was good at making me feel like I couldn't do better. When I finally caught him cheating, it gave me the strength to end things. But then he started stalking me, showing up at my workplace and sending endless messages. He only stopped when I threatened to call the police. Everyone in my family knew about this, including my sister. They knew how hard it had been for me to break free from that relationship. When I started planning my baby shower, some friends warned me that my sister had been asking about my ex. She was contacting people from college, trying to find out where he worked and what he was doing. I decided not to invite her to the shower, but she found out about the event through other relatives. I didn't think much of it then. That was my mistake. The baby shower was at my house, and everything started normally. My friends had decorated the place beautifully, and everyone was having a good time. About an hour into the party, my ex showed up at my door. I was so shocked that I couldn't move. He walked in with a stack of papers, went straight to my husband, and announced that he'd been having an affair with me for the past 6 months. He claimed the baby was his and demanded partial custody rights. He said I had been avoiding him, even though he wanted to be part of the baby's life. Then he dropped the papers, fake screenshots of conversations between us, and left. I broke down completely. The thought that people might believe him, even for a second, was terrifying. Thankfully, nobody did. My husband and parents knew it was all lies, and they stood by me. But the party was ruined. Most guests left after lunch, and I spent the rest of the day crying in my room. I knew my sister was behind this. The timing was too perfect, and she was the only one who had been asking about my ex. But instead of confronting her directly, I decided to get proof. I unblocked my ex online and messaged him, playing on his emotions. I knew he still had feelings for me, so I acted hurt and confused about why he would do this to me. He fell for it and confessed everything. My sister had paid him $5,000 to crash my baby's shower and create this drama. She had contacted him weeks ago and planned the whole thing. I sent the screenshots to my parents without adding any comments. They were shocked but didn't hesitate when I told them they needed to choose between us. I said I couldn't have someone like her in my life anymore, especially with a baby on the way. They chose me immediately and cut all contact with my sister. A few days later, she showed up at my door crying. She had tried reaching our parents, but found herself blocked everywhere. When they finally spoke to her, they told her about my ultimatum and their choice. She came straight to my house, begging me to fix things, saying she was sorry and that she hadn't thought it would go this far. I refused to open the door. I told her through the door that she had brought this on herself, and I threatened to call the police if she didn't leave. After she left, I felt guilty for a while. She was still my sister, and we had grown up together. But then I remembered what she had done, paid my abusive ex to show up at my baby shower and try to ruin my marriage. She knew how he had treated me, how much he had hurt me, and she still chose to bring him back into my life. No amount of jealousy could justify that. 2 days after my sister's breakdown at my door, my parents called me. They hadn't heard from her since telling her about their decision, but they had some information that explained her behavior. Apparently, she had gone through a bad breakup around the time I announced my pregnancy. Her boyfriend of 2 years had gotten a job offer in another state, and when she suggested trying long distance, he ended things. He said it wasn't worth the effort. This news made me understand her bitterness a bit better. Here she was dealing with a breakup while I was married and expecting a baby. But understanding her pain didn't excuse her actions. Paying my ex to crash my baby shower and claim my baby was his? That was just crazy. My parents agreed. They told me that even without my ultimatum, they would have stopped talking to her. When she came to their house, she wasn't crying like she did at my place. Instead, she was screaming at them, saying they were treating her like a failure just because she wasn't married with a baby. She accused them of being disappointed in her, which wasn't true at all. They were still proud of her being a surgeon. They had just learned to be proud of me too, for different reasons. My sister couldn't handle this change. She was used to being the golden child, and seeing our parents treat me well made her feel less special. She even said they were only excited about me because I got knocked up. That was the last straw for my parents. After hearing all this, I stopped feeling guilty. She wasn't sorry about what she did. She was only sorry about losing our parents' attention. We decided to tell all our relatives what had happened. Most of them were shocked and agreed not to invite her to any family events. For a week, everything was quiet. Then my husband called me from work, which was unusual because he never calls during office hours. My sister had shown up at his workplace and was refusing to leave. She told the receptionist she needed to talk to him, and when he said no, she just sat in the lobby and wouldn't move. I had to unblock her number to call her. I told her she was embarrassing herself and our family by harassing my husband at work. This was between her and me. He had nothing to do with it. She wouldn't listen, saying she thought my husband could make me see sense. After arguing for a while, I gave up and told the receptionist to call security. They had to escort her out while she yelled about wanting to talk to my husband. That night, we talked about getting a restraining order. If she was willing to show up at my husband's workplace and make a scene, who knew what else she might do? We contacted a lawyer the next day to start the process. The lawyer asked for all the evidence we had: the screenshots of her paying my ex, security footage from my husband's office, and statements from people at the baby shower. He said we had a strong case for harassment. While we were gathering evidence, my sister started sending emails to our entire family. She wrote long messages about how I was tearing the family apart with my childish ultimatums. She claimed she only brought my ex to the shower because she thought we still had feelings for each other. She said she was trying to help me avoid making a mistake by staying with my husband. Most relatives ignored her emails, but some replied telling her to get help. One of our aunts, who's a therapist, even offered to help her find a counselor. My sister responded by accusing everyone of ganging up on her. Then she started showing up at places where she knew I might be. She waited outside my favorite coffee shop one morning. When I walked out and saw her, I turned around and went back inside. The staff let me use their back door to leave. Another day, she parked outside my prenatal yoga class. I had to call my husband to pick me up because I didn't want to walk to my car alone. These incidents made us speed up the restraining order process. Our lawyer said her behavior showed a pattern of harassment that would help our case. He also suggested documenting everything: saving her emails, taking pictures when she showed up places, keeping records of all incidents. My parents felt terrible about everything. They blamed themselves for treating us so differently when we were growing up. My mom cried, saying maybe if they hadn't put so much pressure on my sister to be perfect, she wouldn't have turned out this way. I told them it wasn't their fault. Lots of people have difficult childhoods without turning into stalkers. One evening, my ex called me from a new number. He said my sister had contacted him again, offering more money if he would sign an affidavit claiming we had an affair. He refused this time and wanted to warn me. I thanked him for letting me know, but reminded him not to contact me again. This new information went straight to our lawyer. He said it showed my sister was still trying to interfere with my marriage, which strengthened our case for the restraining order. The stress was starting to affect my pregnancy. My blood pressure was higher than usual at my last checkup, and my doctor said I needed to avoid anxiety. We decided not to tell her about my sister. She just advised me to rest more and stay calm. My husband suggested we move to a new place before the baby arrives. Our lease was ending in 2 months anyway. We found a nice house in a gated community, which made me feel safer. We didn't tell anyone the new address except my parents and a few close friends, all of whom promised to keep it secret from my sister. Through all this, I kept thinking about how things had gotten so bad. My sister and I were never close, but we used to at least be civil. Now she was someone I needed legal protection from. It was sad, but I knew we were doing the right thing. My baby and my marriage had to come first. The restraining order came through 3 weeks after we applied. The judge looked at all our evidence, the baby shower incident, the workplace scene, her stalking, and her attempts to bribe my ex again. We got a 1-year order that prevented her from coming within 500 feet of me, my husband, our home, or his workplace. When she was served the papers, she had another meltdown. This time, she went to our parents' house and refused to leave their front yard. They had to call the police and she got a warning. She kept screaming about how a piece of paper couldn't keep her from her family. The police told her that yes, it actually could, and if she violated it, she would be arrested. The next day, my mom got a call from my sister's supervisor at the hospital. Apparently, she hadn't shown up for work in 3 days. They were worried because it wasn't like her to miss work without notice. My parents tried calling her but got no answer. They drove to her apartment to check on her. They found her place a mess, something very unusual for my usually perfect sister. There were takeout containers everywhere, unwashed clothes on the floor, and she was in bed at 2 p.m. on a workday. She broke down when she saw them, finally admitting that she needed help. It turned out she had been struggling with more than just the breakup. The pressure of being perfect her whole life had finally caught up with her. She had been having panic attacks at work, worried she would make a mistake during surgery. The breakup just pushed her over the edge, and then seeing me happy and supported by our parents made something snap inside her. My parents convinced her to take a leave of absence from work and start therapy. They found her a good psychiatrist who specialized in high-achieving professionals. She was diagnosed with anxiety and depression and started medication along with regular counseling. I heard all this from my parents, who kept me updated even though I didn't ask. Part of me was glad she was getting help, but another part was still angry about everything she'd done. The restraining order stayed in place. Her mental health issues explained her behavior, but didn't excuse it. We moved into our new house a month later. It was perfect timing because my doctor had put me on bed rest due to the earlier blood pressure issues. The stress of the past few months had taken its toll, but now I could finally relax in our new home. My husband worked from home most days to take care of me. Our new neighbors were friendly but not nosy, which was exactly what we needed. We set up the nursery, ordered everything online, and started preparing for the baby. 3 months into her therapy, my sister sent me a letter through our parents. Her therapist had suggested writing to me as part of her recovery, but she understood if I didn't want to read it. I decided to read it with my husband present. The letter was different from her previous attempts to contact me. She didn't make excuses or beg for forgiveness. Instead, she wrote about how therapy had helped her understand her issues. She admitted that she had been jealous, not just of my marriage and pregnancy, but of how I had broken free from the pressure to be perfect. She wrote about how watching me choose my own path and find happiness had made her question everything she'd worked for. She realized she had become a surgeon partly because it was impressive, not because it made her happy. Her ex-boyfriend had wanted to break up even before the job offer, saying she was too focused on appearances and others' approval. The letter ended with an apology. She said she knew she had caused damage that might never be repaired, and she wasn't asking me to forgive her. She just wanted me to know she was working on her issues and understanding why she had acted so terribly. I didn't respond to the letter, but I did tell our parents they could tell her I had read it. They said she was doing better, still in therapy but back at work part-time. She had moved to a less stressful position at the hospital, working in a clinic instead of doing surgery. 2 weeks before my due date, she sent another letter. This one was shorter, just saying she was happy to hear through our parents that my pregnancy was going well. She also promised to respect the restraining order and stay away from me and the baby. I went into labor 3 days later. Despite all the earlier complications, the delivery went smoothly. We had a healthy baby boy, and both my husband and parents were there with me. When my mom asked if she could tell my sister that the baby had arrived safely, I said yes. My sister sent a small package to my parents' house for the baby, just some onesies and a card saying congratulations. She didn't try to push for more contact or ask to see him. My parents said therapy was teaching her about boundaries and respect. It's been 6 months now. The restraining order is still in place, and my sister has kept her distance. She's still in therapy and has started dating someone new, someone she met outside the hospital, who my parents say seems to be a good influence. Sometimes I wonder if we'll ever have a relationship again. Maybe, after the restraining order expires, we could try family therapy together. But for now, I'm focused on my baby and my little family. My parents visit often, and we're all happier with clear boundaries in place. The whole experience taught me something important. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with family, but they're often the most necessary. My sister's breakdown was partly due to never having boundaries or being told no. In trying to make her extraordinary, our parents had made it impossible for her to be ordinary, to make mistakes, to fail, to be human. My baby won't grow up with that pressure. He'll know it's okay to be himself, whatever that means. And if he ever has siblings, we'll make sure they know they're loved for who they are, not what they achieve.